a WikiVidi documentaries production. Don't forget to like and subscribe. Enjoy. Satoshi Nakamoto. Satoshi Nakamoto is the name used by the unknown person or people who designed Bitcoin and created its original reference implementation. As part of the implementation, they also devised the first blockchain database. In the process, they were the first to solve the double spending problem for digital currency. They were active in the development of Bitcoin up until December 2010. History. On a peer-to-peer foundation profile, Nakamoto claimed to be a man living in Japan, born on the 5th of April 1975. Speculation about the true identity of Nakamoto has mostly focused on a number of cryptography and computer science experts of non-Japanese descent, living in the United States and Europe. Satoshi Nakamoto also created the Bitcoin.org forum, posted the first message in 2009 under the pseudonym Satoshi. Development of Bitcoin. In October 2008, Nakamoto published a paper on the cryptography mailing list at mtstad.com describing the Bitcoin digital currency. It was titled, Bitcoin, a peer-to-peer electronic cash system. In January 2009, Nakamoto released the first Bitcoin software that launched the network, and the first units of the Bitcoin cryptocurrency, called Bitcoins. Satoshi Nakamoto released the version 0.1 of Bitcoin software on SourceForge on the 9th of January 2009. Nakamoto claimed that work on the writing of the code began in 2007. The inventor of Bitcoin knew that due to its nature, the core design would have to be able to support a broad range of transaction types. The implemented solution enabled specialized codes and data fields from the start through the use of a predicative script. Nakamoto created a website with the domain name bitcoin.org and continued to collaborate with other developers on the Bitcoin software until mid-2010. Around this time, he handed over control of the source code repository and network alert key to Gavin Andresen, transferred several related domains to various prominent members of the Bitcoin community, and stopped his involvement in the project. Until shortly before his absence and handover, Nakamoto made all modifications to the source code himself. The inventor left a text message in the first mind block which reads: the Times, the 3rd of January 2009, Chancellor on brink of second bailout for banks. The text refers to a headline in the Times published on the 3rd of January 2009. It is a strong indication that the first block was mined no earlier than this date. The Genesis block has a timestamp of 18:15 and 5 seconds GMT on the 3rd of January 2009. This block is unlike all other blocks in that it doesn't have a previous block to reference. This required the use of custom code to mine it. Timestamps for subsequent blocks indicate that Nakamoto did not try to mine all the early blocks solely for himself. As the sole, predominant early miner, the inventor was awarded Bitcoin at Genesis and for 10 days afterwards. Except for test transactions, these remain unspent since mid-January 2009. The public Bitcoin transaction log shows that Nakamoto's known addresses contain roughly 1 million Bitcoins. This is worth over 19 billion USD. This makes him the 44th richest person on Earth. Characteristics and identity. Nakamoto has not disclosed any personal information when discussing technical matters. He provided some commentary on banking and fractional reserve banking. On his peer-to-peer foundation profile as of 2012, Nakamoto claimed to be a 37-year-old male who lived in Japan, but some speculated he was unlikely to be Japanese due to his use of perfect English and his Bitcoin software not being documented or labeled in Japanese. Occasional British English spelling and terminology in both source code comments and forum postings led to speculation that Nakamoto, or at least one individual in the consortium claiming to be him, was of Commonwealth origin. Stefan Thomas, a Swiss coder and active community member, graphed the timestamps for each of Nakamoto's Bitcoin forum posts. The resulting chart showed a steep decline to almost no posts between the hours of 5 a.m. and 11 a.m. Greenwich Mean Time. As this pattern held true even on Saturdays and Sundays, it suggested that Nakamoto was asleep at this time. Nakamoto's initial email to die is dated the 22nd of August 2008. The metadata for this PDF yields as the creation date the value 20,081,3,134,958.07'00. This implies the 3rd of October 2008, or a bit over a month later, which is consistent with the local date mentioned in the cypherpunk mailing list email. This is an earlier draft than the final draft on Bitcoin.org, which is dated 20,090,313,315.06'00 or the 24th of March 2009. The time zone differs, -7 versus -6. Gavin Andresen has said of Nakamoto's code, "He was a brilliant coder, but it was quirky." Nick Szabo. In December 2013, a blogger named Skygray linked Nick Szabo to the Bitcoin whitepaper using a stylometric analysis. Szabo is a decentralized currency enthusiast and published a paper on BitGold, which is considered a precursor to Bitcoin. He is known to have been interested in using pseudonyms in the 1990s. In a May 2011 article, Szabo stated about the Bitcoin creator, "Myself, Wade I, and Hal Finney were the only people I know of who liked the idea enough to pursue it to any significant extent until Nakamoto." Detailed research by financial author Dominic Frisby provides much circumstantial evidence but, as he admits, no proof that Satoshi is Szabo. Speaking on RT's The Kaiser Report, he said, "I've concluded there is only one person in the whole world that has the sheer breadth, but also the specificity of knowledge, and it is this chap." However, Szabo has denied being Satoshi. In a July 2014 email to Frisby, he said, "Thanks for letting me know. I'm afraid you got it wrong doxing me as Satoshi, but I'm used to it." Nathaniel Popper wrote in the New York Times that the most convincing evidence pointed to a reclusive American man of Hungarian descent named Nick Szabo. Dorian Nakamoto. In a high-profile 6 March 2014 article in the magazine Newsweek, journalist Leah McGrath-Goodman identified Dorian Prentice Satoshi Nakamoto, a Japanese-American man living in California, whose birth name is Satoshi Nakamoto, as the Nakamoto in question. Besides his name, Goodman pointed to a number of facts that circumstantially suggested he was the Bitcoin inventor. Trained as a physicist at Cal Poly University in Pomona, Nakamoto worked as a systems engineer on classified defense projects and computer engineer for technology and financial information services companies. Nakamoto was laid off twice in the early 1990s and turned libertarian, according to his daughter, and encouraged her to start her own business, not under the government's thumb. In the article's seemingly biggest piece of evidence, Goodman wrote that when she asked him about Bitcoin during a brief in-person interview, Nakamoto seemed to confirm his identity as the Bitcoin founder by stating, "I am no longer involved in that and I cannot discuss it. It's been turned over to other people. They are in charge of it now. I no longer have any connection." The article's publication led to a flurry of media interest, including reporters camping out near Dorian Nakamoto's house and subtly chasing him by car when he drove to do an interview. However, during the subsequent full-length interview, Dorian Nakamoto denied all connection to Bitcoin, saying he had never heard of the currency before, and that he had misinterpreted Goodman's question as being about his previous work for military contractors, much of which was classified. In a Reddit, Ask Me Anything interview, he claimed he had misinterpreted Goodman's question as being related to his work for Citibank. Later that day, the pseudonymous Nakamoto's peer-to-peer foundation account posted its first message in 5 years, stating, "I am not Dorian Nakamoto." However, it is generally believed that Nakamoto's peer-to-peer foundation account had been hacked, and the message was not sent by him. Hal Finney. Hal Finney was a pre-Bitcoin cryptographic pioneer and the first person to use the software, file bug reports, and make improvements. He also lived a few blocks from Dorian Nakamoto's family home, according to Forbes journalist Andy Greenberg. Greenberg asked the writing analysis consultancy Juola and Associates to compare a sample of Finney's writing to Satoshi Nakamoto's, and they found that it was the closest resemblance they had yet come across. Greenberg theorized that Finney may have been a ghostwriter on behalf of Nakamoto, or that he simply used his neighbor Dorian's identity as a drop, or patsy whose personal information is used to hide online exploits. However, after meeting Finney, seeing the emails between him and Nakamoto and his Bitcoin wallet's history and hearing his denial, Greenberg concluded that Finney was telling the truth. Juola and Associates also found that Nakamoto's emails to Finney more closely resemble Nakamoto's other writings than Finney's do. Finney's fellow extropian and sometimes co-blogger Robin Hanson assigned a subjective probability of, at least, 15% that Hal was more involved than he said, before further evidence suggested that was not the case. Craig Stephen Wright. On the 8th of December 2015, Wired wrote that Craig Stephen Wright, an Australian academic, either invented Bitcoin or is a brilliant hoaxer who very badly wants us to believe he did. Craig Wright took down his Twitter account, and neither he nor his ex-wife responded to press inquiries. The same day, Gizmodo published a story with evidence obtained by a hacker who supposedly broke into Wright's email accounts, claiming that Satoshi Nakamoto was a joint pseudonym for Craig Stephen Wright and computer forensics analyst David Kleiman, who died in 2013. A number of prominent Bitcoin promoters remained unconvinced by the reports. Subsequent reports also raised the possibility that the evidence provided was an elaborate hoax, which Wired acknowledged, cast doubt on their suggestion that Wright was Nakamoto. On the 9th of December, only hours after Wired claimed Wright was Nakamoto, Wright's home in Gordon, New South Wales was raided by at least 10 police officers. His business premises in Ryde, New South Wales, were also searched by police. The Australian Federal Police stated they conducted searches to assist the Australian Taxation Office and that this matter is unrelated to recent media reporting regarding the digital currency Bitcoin. According to a document released by Gizmodo alleged to be a transcript of a meeting between Wright and the ATO, he had been involved in a taxation dispute with them for several years. On the 2nd of May 2016, Craig Wright posted on his blog publicly claiming to be Satoshi Nakamoto. In articles released on the same day, journalists from the BBC and The Economist stated that they saw Wright signing a message using the private key associated with the first Bitcoin transaction. During his BBC interview, Wright said, Wright's claim was supported by John Matonis and Bitcoin developer Gavin Andresen, both of whom met Wright and witnessed a similar signing demonstration. However, Bitcoin developer Peter Todd said that Wright's blog post, which appeared to contain cryptographic proof, actually contained nothing of the sort. The Bitcoin Core project released a statement on Twitter saying, "There is currently no publicly available cryptographic proof that anyone in particular is Bitcoin's creator." Bitcoin developer Jeff Garzik agreed that evidence publicly provided by Wright does not prove anything. And security researcher Dan Kaminsky concluded Wright's claim was intentional scammery. On the 4th of May 2016, Wright made another post on his blog intimating his intentions to publish a series of pieces that will lay the foundations for this extraordinary claim. But the following day, he deleted all his blog posts and replaced them with a notice entitled, "I'm sorry," which read in part, in June 2016, the London Review of Books published an article by Andrew O'Hagan about the events, based on his book The Secret Life, 3 True Stories, in which O'Hagan spends several weeks with Wright at the request of Wright's public relations team, which, as revealed in the book, was set up as a result of a business deal between Wright and various individuals including Calvin Ayre after Bitcoin was created. All of those involved in the described business deals seemed to agree that they wanted a significant event in human history to be documented by a writer with complete impartiality and freedom to investigate. O'Hagan was with Wright during the time of his various media interviews. O'Hagan also interviews Wright's wife, colleagues, and many of the other people involved in his claims. It also reveals that the Canadian company Entrust was behind Wright's claim made in May 2016. Further, O'Hagan suggests that Wright provided an invalid private key because he was legally unable to provide the valid one as a result of legal obligations agreed as part of a Seychelles trust deal previously reached. O'Hagan's book also corroborates the suggestion that both Wright and David Kleiman were the identities of the moniker Satoshi Nakamoto. Following O'Hagan's article, BBC journalist Rory Kellan-Jones wrote a follow-up article citing O'Hagan's account as the possible reasons for Wright's apparent unwillingness to declare himself as Nakamoto. This is in reference to O'Hagan's first-hand account, which describes business associates as being furious when they learned that Wright had provided invalid proof and for his failure to disclose the details of the Seychelles trust deal, which meant that he could neither provide said proof publicly or yet gain access to the Bitcoin attributed to Nakamoto. Helen Jones concludes his article by expressing doubts about Wright, but admits it seems very likely he was involved, perhaps as part of a team that included Dave Kleiman and Hal Finney, the recipient of the first transaction with the currency. The 2017 Netflix documentary titled Banking on Bitcoin concluded with an extract of Wright's 2016 interview with the BBC. On February 14, 2018, a suit against Wright for more than $10 billion was lodged in a Florida court on behalf of David Kleiman's estate, alleging that Wright has fraudulently appropriated Kleiman's share of the bitcoins that he and Kleiman mined together. The suit sets out much detail of the collaboration between Wright and Kleiman, but does not speculate on whether they or either of them created Bitcoin. Brought to you by WikiVidi Documentaries. Would you like to know more?